Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome to, or hello if it's not morning, if you're watching this on demand. Welcome to our breathing challenge. Breathe better, feel better, ride better, move better, all of the benefits that we get from improving the function of our breath. All come down in being more aware of how you're breathing and moving closer to that function or improved function. So far we have been focusing on the diaphragm. This is the last session on the diaphragm today, where we're focusing on the diaphragm. And from tomorrow, there's a workshop on the corset muscle, the transverse abdominis, which is another one of your main breathing muscles. So today, just continuing to look at the diaphragm, I've got some other imageries for you. And our aim today is to take you through a process of releasing tension, stretching the diaphragm. We've got some strengthening exercises for the diaphragm as well. And then we're going to have a look at putting that into your daily lives. So let's just begin by checking in with ourselves. So just a thought, when we are looking, we know where the diaphragm is in the body. Yeah, it's attached to the rib cage, to those lower 6 ribs, and to the front and all the way around. So we can imagine that inside of our bodies, that diaphragm there. Now, I kind of think of it as a tube. My body is like a tube. And if or a hose pipe even. So if I have my alignment, good alignment, so my pelvis is underneath my rib cage and they're aligned, that's going to give my diaphragm more opportunity to fully contract and stretch. How would that change if I was to be more in this posture, where I'm moving my rib cage back, and you can see I've got a kink now in that hose pipe. So being able to breathe better really does require good alignment. So obviously for my riders, if we're using the breath to affect our horse, to affect how we are feeling on the horse, and to be able to maintain good alignment, which leads to improved balance, then obviously having that good alignment and the breathing come hand in hand. So before we begin, we're going to start thinking of our pelvis position, and then the rib cage sitting above. So you can almost imagine this tube and the cage and the diaphragm. So just as you're sitting there, just notice your breathing. How are you breathing today? Is your breathing deep? Is your diaphragm fully contracting and lengthening? How does your lower back feel? How does your neck feel? So just checking in with your physical body. So then we're going to do our tapping. So I'm going to continue to breathe. And I have got some of my Franklin rules here today. We are going to use them, but you can use them for tapping as well. It's quite a slightly different sensation. Breathe in. When you breathe in, just again, think of the ribs expanding. Breathing out, and they lower. We're tapping that left side of the rib cage, breathing into this. Then we can stop and just sit. Notice if that feels different on either side. So that comparison, how does one side feel compared to the other? And we do the other side. So this is for our proprioception, that stimulation of the sensory nervous system, making our body more aware. And with that imagery, we can visualize that diaphragm inside the chest, tapping, and when we breathe in, the ribs are expanding, and when we breathe out, the ribs are lowering. and pause. You can just see how that feels. Certainly feel my ribs are freer. And I would like to release more tension in the diaphragm for you today. So that's with our shaking. So as we can't touch and we can't see the diaphragm, but we can shake it like we would want to shake out tension. Yeah, if we felt tension in another muscle, you know, shaking is a really lovely technique to use, which we practiced in the last session. So you can stay seated if you like. I like to stand up for this because I always find it's easier to get that feeling. Shaking the diaphragm, so just jumping up and down. Continue to breathe. And just imagine that diaphragm kind of lifting, vibrating. You can hear it happening as you move. You can shake. And as you shake the diaphragm, you can move your spine around. You can side bend, shake it down. Good. So we're shaking out that tension in the diaphragm. Take another seat, or if you're standing, just check in with yourself. Good. So then we're going to stretch the diaphragm. So the diaphragm, again, just on those lower 6 ribs on the left, on the right side, I'm going to put my left hand there, reach my right arm up, and I'm going to side bend. And just visualize, or in an image, that diaphragm really stretching inside the ribs. Then I inhale and come back. Breathing out. Breathing in. Breathing out, and the diaphragm is lengthening. Breathing in, and it comes back, shortening. And it lengthens, and it shortens. Lengthen and exhale, pause, and see if you can now breathe into the side ribs here. As you inhale, your ribs are expanding, your diaphragm is lowering. Inhale, diaphragm is lifting, ribs are softening. One more breath. Feel, access that space. And coming back on the in-breath and soften down. And then notice how that feels. Breathing into how does that compare to the other side. Let's place that hand here, do the other one. Exhale. Oh, and inhale. Focus on that stretching in the diaphragm, attaching to those bottom ribs, and we're lifting. We're separating the ribs like gills at the side of your body. As you inhale, exhale here, and inhale. Exhale, diaphragm is lifting. And inhale. Last one, hold on the out breath, then breathe in. Expanding, softening. And on the in breath, come back long and soften down. And then notice how that feels. So I'm going to introduce a new stretch today. And if you have your Franklin balls or those spiky balls that I use, I know some of you use them from the classes. We're going to take it down onto the floor. If you don't have balls, please don't worry, you can still take part, because what you can do is you can use a towel. And sometimes this is a little bit more forgiving, it's less intense. So if you are quite tight in your middle back, this is a great exercise, but you need to be mindful about how much extension we're putting you into. So I'm going to use these balls. These are the Franklin air-filled balls, but obviously a towel folded, and how big the towel is obviously depending on how much you feel, how comfortable you feel in your spine when we extend you over the top. So I'm just going to move my camera down, and I'm going to have a setup on the floor. As I said, you can use a towel, perfectly fine. So we're going to lay on your back, and we're going to take one ball under the middle back, so just below your shoulder blades, and the other ball, and then I'm going to support my head with my hands, and I'm going to arch my spine over the top. And there's no exact science to where these balls need to be, but what I need you to be is relatively comfortable. So if it's pinching and painful, please just play around with the ball position. You might need to take them slightly higher. You might find that them going slightly lower just sort of helps you to feel more relaxed over the balls. So with my chest lifted, you can feel how the ribs have been taken forwards. We're just going to take some breaths in. And you can have the imagery of your diaphragm, inhaling, diaphragm lowers. Exhaling. Diaphragm is lifted. Breathing in. Breathing out. So for my riders, keep breathing in and out of that imagery. Just a point to consider is the psoas, which is one of the hip flexors, is connected fascially to your diaphragm. So if you're tight in the hips, we're lacking movement around your hip joint, which is obviously essential to be able to move with the horse's back. Sometimes this is due to tension in your psoas. If you're not breathing, the psoas is inhibited in the same way that the diaphragm would be inhibited. So our deep breaths are allowing our psoas to also function better. Breathe in, ribs expand, diaphragm lowers. And out, diaphragm lifts. One more breath. Breathing out. And breathing in. Good. Just remove the towel or the balls, and then just lay and see how that makes you feel now in your spine, in your back, in your ribs. Still visualizing the diaphragm movement. And right. So that's another really lovely stretch for the fibers and the tissues of the diaphragm. So the next thing that we need to do before we can kind of conclude is to think about how we're going to strengthen the diaphragm. So the diaphragm is the muscle like any other muscle in the body. If we put resistance against the muscle, then it has to adapt to overcome that resistance. So when we are inhaling, so the diaphragm is like this, and my fingers represent the contraction, the direction of the contraction of the muscle. So without going too scientific, but when we contract a muscle, the fibers slide together, and when we lengthen the muscle, the fibers move apart. Yeah, and that's happening along the length of the muscle. This is happening. So muscles pull and lengthen in one direction. Okay, so when we are aware of the direction that they are pulling in, we can focus more on, engaging and releasing, engaging and releasing. So with the diaphragm, when the diaphragm is up in your chest, the fibers are closer together, so it's in its state of contraction. Sorry, it's further apart, so it's in its lengthened phase. So when it lowers, can you see the fingers move together? That's it contracting. So that's when that's called a concentric contraction, when the muscle is shortening. We're going to put resistance into it, so it's stronger as it's shortening, and then we can breathe in, out, and the fibers move apart, it's stretching. So it's contracting and it's lengthening. The muscles shortening, the muscles lengthening, and shortening and lengthening. So when the muscle's shortening, can you see it as it comes together? My elbows would be my rib cage, pushes out because the muscle is flattening, but as it flattens, because it's dome, it pushes the ribs out and then it comes in. So how might we then strengthen the diaphragm as we are inhaling, as it's contracting, to pull down, push the ribs out and draw the air into the body? Well, what we can do is we get our band, and if you don't have a band today, that's okay. You can just put your hands against the side of the rib cage to add resistance. But these bands are terrific. They're great. You can use them, in class. We use them for a lot of exercises. On the mounted application for the Franklin work, we use them to give us feedback and improve our proprioception, balance and control. So I've got it relatively tight around my rib cage. So now my diaphragm has more resistance to push against as I breathe in. So I'm going to bring my awareness to my diaphragm. I'm breathing in and breathing out. Breathing in, breathing out. Check you've got good alignment so that the ribs are directly above your pelvis. Your shoulders are relaxed. Breathing in. If you don't have a band, just hold in your ribs and putting a little bit of force into them as you inhale. Two more. So either option is going to give you the same, where's my band from? The same kind of benefit in terms of higher resistance. So then we take the band away and move your hands. And we can think about how we can check in, notice how we feel. Freedom. I feel my ribs are freer. That resistance gone. My ribs are moving more. And that leads me really into some imagery for the rib cage. Because of obviously where the diaphragm is, how do you think we can move the diaphragm more efficiently within our bodies? How would our rib cage affect that? So if our rib cage is rigid, and just by the terms of the name cage, very often I think we image the rib cage as being quite rigid. But actually there's a lot of movement that is happening in the rib cage every time we breathe and that diaphragm contracts and stretches. And this is not only going to benefit obviously the efficiency of our breath, but if you've got tension in your middle back, because that's where the rib cage attaches to those transverse processes in the thoracic spine, which is your middle back, when we get more movement in those joints, again, we get more freedom. Our rib cage becomes more mobile, flexible, more playful. So our movement becomes easier and more satisfying. We get far more control over the thoracic area, and we become far more efficient at absorbing forces through the body, which is, as riders, as I've already mentioned, force absorption is one of the things that we can really improve on to make us better force absorbers for when we're on the horse's back. So let's take a look at the imagery for the ribs. So now I've only got the sternum here today, and as I've shown you in the past, this is my sternum. At the bottom we have that sigmoid process. Now when we breathe in, the sternum, if I use, actually this might be quite a nice, so this is my sternum. When I inhale, my sternum, this is the pointy bit at the bottom, my sternum lifts up and then down. So when I breathe in, breathe out, sternum is mobile. Breathe in, and the sternum moves forward. It's a bit like, you know, like a, if you've got a cat flap in your house, I don't know, you know, where it just swings like a swinging cat flap. When you breathe in, it swings forwards. When you breathe out, it swings back. So that's how the sternum moves with the breath. And again, referencing the riding, your sternum, if you keep your sternum between your horse's ears, okay, it's a really nice reference for alignment. So if you think of your sternum when you inhale, so it's not my whole spine arching, it's just my sternum lifting, a bit like a water, like a pump, lifts up, the pump handle comes down, lifts up and goes down, and lifts up on the in-breath and down. So that's the sternum movement. To just image that is really nice for the rib cage. And the other imagery is, I don't know if you can see this because I've got black from here. So can you see this bucket handle? Okay, so the bucket handle imagery is, so this is my sternum, my ribs attached to the side of my, to the cartilage, and then it goes round and attaches to my thoracic. So this is my rib, for example, here. So when I breathe in, my rib lifts, the bucket handle lifts. And when I breathe out, the bucket handle goes down. Yeah, so on the ribs on both sides, you've got a bucket handle, and when you inhale, the bucket handle lifts, and when you exhale, the bucket handle lowers. So you inhale, you can have your hands on the side of the ribs, you can feel your ribs. And then when you breathe in, think of that bucket handle lifting, the bucket handle lowering. And good. So a few more imageries for you to get more flexible in the rib cage and to obviously strengthen and mobilize, release tension and stretch the diaphragm. Let's finish with a few minutes of breathing exercise. So find a comfortable place. You can be sat, you can be standing. And I want you to just bring your focus inwards. So again, bring yourself inside your body, thinking of your diaphragm. Yes, the heart sits on top of the diaphragm. You have your two lungs sitting above the diaphragm as well. It's encased by your mobile, flexible rib cage with the sternum at the front and those ribs are going round, attaching into the middle, the transverse processes of your middle back, your thoracic spine. So this cage around your lungs and your heart is very flexible or mobile, and your diaphragm is sitting just underneath. Take a breath in, let the diaphragm lower, and the heart comes down with it. Breathing out. So take a breath in for 2. Breathe out for 4. In for 2. Out for 4. In for 2. Out for 4. 3, 2, 1. Inhale, 2. 1. Exhale, 4. 3, 2, 1. Inhale for 3. Exhale for 6. Breathe in for 3. Breathe out for 6. Inhale for 3. Exhale for 6. Breathe in. Breathing out 6. Inhale. Exhale. All the breath out, lifting the diaphragm, bucket handles dropping, sternum lowering. Breathe in for 4. Out for 8. Inhale for 4. Let the ribs expand. And out for 8. Inhale for 4. Exhale for 8. Inhale for 5. Exhale for 10. Inhale for 5. Exhale for 10. One more time. Breathe in for 5. Breathe out for 10. Breathe your natural breath. Bringing the breath into the tummy. Movement of your rib cage. Your mobile, playful, flexible rib cage. And what I'd like you to do for your homework is to be able to take that breathing into your daily activities. So starting, say, just going for a walk. When you're walking, are you able to breathe into the belly? When you breathe into belly, do you notice that it's the abdominals are coming forwards and back? Are your ribs actually moving? Yeah, we need that movement to facilitate the breath. Yeah. So it's all fine when we're sat down, calm and with good alignment. The tricky part, or the more challenging part for most people, is when we put that into practice in our movement. So when things get more complicated, things get higher intensity, what's the first thing that you tend to do? Hold your breath. And when we hold our breath, then all of those things, well, the rib cage becomes more rigid, our mid back becomes more rigid, yeah, our psoas is inhibited. So breathing is kind of the foundations, the fundamentals to good movement. So especially when we're riding, I know I do it myself, come out of the dressage test and I go, I'm getting better. So we want to be able to practice our breathing off the horse and or out of our activity. So if you're doing Pilates or yoga or whatever physical activity you're doing, if you can start to be more conscious of your breath and how you're using your breaths, it's going to start to really make your move more satisfying and efficient. So practice that movement of your rib cage, the bucket handles or the sternum, lifting forward and back, thinking of the imagery that we've covered over the last week, and take what works for you and apply it into your daily movement. If you're a rider, then yeah, absolutely. Again, just checking that you're not holding your breath. And when you start to breathe, just notice the response of your horse. When you're able to control your breathing, you'll find that maybe the horse starts to breathe with your rhythm as well. And that's, you know, really an amazing connection to achieve. So lots to work on, guys. If you've got any questions, do let me know. And the workshop tomorrow is going to be posted. I'll be doing it live on my question page It's a half hour, 45 minutes, looking at the corset muscle and how we can ensure that when we're using this muscle that we're still able to breathe as we are using our core. So lots to cover, and I look forward to seeing you in that video. Thanks guys, have a lovely day. Thank you very much.